the basis for how we keep 8 billion people going and the billion of us that have this exceptional lifestyle going is the pillaging of the life and the geology of the planet. So even if there was no climate change, no pollution, we're so annihilating nature that is game over.
Yeah.
And by some measures, I would say, and I think studies say, more game over than climate change alone.
Another, in fact, reason why I decided not to have kids, apart from the future, it's so unstable and I don't want to leave the planet and knowing that my kids are not going to be okay, is that it takes a village to raise a kid. And we don't have villages anymore. And so there's so much pressure on parents. And now there are only two people, sometimes one person. And it's much harder. And villages used to be a lot more community-based. You had a support, a health support, a mental health support. And people could help each other. It was a lot healthier than now. I remember when I was studying a master in anthropology, they were showing graphs on health. And in poor countries, you actually had less vascular diseases like heart attacks. Then when a country would actually get to a stage of earning more money and being more developed, people dying more of heart attacks and had more mental health issues. So I'm definitely for degrowth, to be honest.
Well, you said a couple of really important things. First of all, degrowth, planned degrowth, I think is the only way forward, because people that say, oh, we can't possibly have that. Well, we're going to have it because, if you see my movie Planet of the Humans, and this is a chart that you can see anywhere, that population spike that went up beginning in the late 1700s from 800 million to 8 billion is so extreme. It's just like a spike. So if you make a graph with the baseline of our human population and consumption 1 inch high, then to actually factor in the explosion in population and consumption post fossil fuels, now you have a spike 10 feet tall, all the way to the ceiling. We had a terrible time even figuring out how to get that into the movie. And so the greatest delusion of all time is that can somehow stay up there.
Yeah.
And I experienced a little bit of that in Flint. People have experienced that around the world. The illusion that somehow, even if everything's said about green energy, nuclear power, fusion, all these fantasies, this spike is not going to stay up there because that spike is also accompanied by the collapse of nature. So this is what drives me is we have to figure out a way to let ourselves down gently and take care of people. And then the other thing you said that was really profound is that we're so obsessed with technology as our savior. And can we grow food in our backyard? First of all, there's no place on earth you're going to grow food in your backyard, survive what humans are going to do in an uncontrolled collapse. Europeans crossed an ocean and killed off an entire continent, 2 continents full of native people in the long run, rather than starve to death in Europe.
Yeah.
In wooden boats.
Yeah.
You think they're going to stay home and not reach you because you're raising food in your backyard? I don't think so. But what you said about community, poor people and tribal people, indigenous people have this sense of community that those of us with wealth don't have. And when the community is involved in caring for the child, caring for each other, supporting each other rather than competing, that's what's going to determine our fate, is whether we can establish that kind of community and trust and mutual support. As an anthropologist, you may notice I was working on a PhD until some life circumstances and film interfered. But one of the first things that I learned from the University of Chicago was that around the turn of the 20th century, around 1900, 90+% of children grew up with the grandparent living in the home or within walking distance. By getting close to the year 2000, 100 years later, it was the opposite. 90+% of children don't have the grandparents in the home or close by. And his point as a social psychologist was that having that extended is actually the determiner of culture and values, and I would say a sense of well-being versus just the parents with the child.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is where I started out my career as a therapist, social worker, and a social planner, trying to figure out what's going wrong with people.
How funny. We started in the same way.
Yeah. And eventually I had to come back to my original concern. People say, well, you want us to go back to the Stone Age. No, the Stone Age isn't available yet. We've got to slowly have a plan. Oh, we're never going to make a plan. Well, yes, if we never talk about it, we will never make a plan. But I believe that by talking about it, having these conversations, that is how I can't come up with a solution or the plan. We have to do it together. I don't know whether it looks like tribal living or Amish living or some, I don't think it looks like some small technical civilization, but the key thing is Small is beautiful and small is survivable. Nothing else is.
I love that. I'm going to put on my fridge. I'm trying to recreate that. We moved from different cities, from Australia in Italy, and we bought a house in the middle of the Mediterranean. So quite isolated. We have 1 hectare and we are thinking about cultivating and getting solar panels. And now you basically I'm wasting my time.
No, it's just not a survival plan. It's good to do. It's fun to do. It's how we may be living. But I believe that it's painful to think about how do we get a smaller population. It's a lot of work. It's trouble. People don't like it. When you challenge the idea of consumption, people get upset. If I can't get on that jet, I'm going to commit suicide. I've actually heard people say that.
What sort of people are you hanging out with?
I've got 4 video cameras. Somebody stop me. I don't need 4 cameras. Why do I have 4 cameras? Maybe I should be sharing them. So all these things that you're attempting to do seem logical, but we're not factoring in the fact that when the rug is pulled out from under us, desperate people are not going to just, in fact, people that store a lot of things may be targets, are likely to be targets.
If we are getting to a point of survival mode, how will we survive it? How we would have to think about these things?
The things you're doing will make sense if we have a gentle landing. But right now, we're not headed for a gentle landing because we have no intent on a drastic cut in our consumption and a plan to share our consumption with everyone.